I will go over the emergency for this room. In an emergency, everyone must evacuate through the nearest safe exit. Those seated in the gallery take direction from security to evacuate. Council takes direction from myself. After evacuating the room, please proceed to a stairwell, take the stairs to ground level, and evacuate the building through the doors marked emergency exit and go to the muster point. Do not take an elevator or walk through the city room. Anyone with limited mobility should identify themselves to security or myself during an evacuation. Finally, please speak with security or myself if you require first aid. Thank you.
What are they doing? What are they?
Well, good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order. At this time, I would like to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and Métis homeland, and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nikoraizka, as well as Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. I will do a roll call of council colleagues. Councillor Wright.
Good morning.
Councillor Knack.
Good morning.
Councillor Principe.
Good morning.
Councillor Stevenson.
Good morning.
Councillor Paquette.
Good morning.
Councillor Tang.
Good morning.
Councillor Hamilton.
Good morning.
Councillor Rutherford.
Good morning.
Councillor Salvador.
Good morning.
Councillor Carmel. Councillor Carmel, late. Okay. Councillor Rice.
Good morning.
And Councillor Jans.
Good morning.
Okay. All right. Adoption of the agenda. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I will move adoption of the May 7th, 2025 City Council public hearing agenda.
Second.
Okay. Please vote.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. We have all the votes.
Excuse me, I think it is, let me see. Margaret Beland, can you please stay muted? Thank you. Okay, that is carried, right? Okay. Any protocol items? Yes, we have one, and I'm going to go to Councillor Principe for it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge two important historical days: the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands in World War II and Victory in Europe Day. May 5th, 2025 marks the 80th anniversary of Liberation Day in the Netherlands. The Netherlands were occupied by Nazi Germany from May 10th, 1940 until May 5th, 1945. During this period, more than 20,000 people died of starvation. Canadian soldiers played a pivotal role in the Netherlands' liberation as they went town to town, canal by canal, pushing back the occupying German forces. This has formed a long-lasting bond of friendship between the two countries. In honor of this connection, the City of Edmonton has an ongoing bond of friendship with Bergen-op-Zoom, Netherlands, a city liberated by an Alberta regiment. On May 8, 1945, Allied soldiers accepted the surrender of German forces across Europe, a day commemorated as VE Day. Over 1 million Canadians served on land, sea, and in the air during the Second World War. The history of the Canadian Armed Forces in Edmonton dates back to the Second World War. Today, the 3rd Canadian Division Support Base Edmonton, commonly referred to as Edmonton Garrison, provides 1/3 of the Canadian Army's fighting power. This includes 5,829 regular forces, 403 reserve forces, and a number of other Canadian Armed Forces units. The Edmonton Salutes Committee, a committee of council, is composed of 25 community, organization, and municipal members. They work to promote and recognize local military contributions at home and abroad toward peace, security, and stability. As we honor and remember the many lives lost during World War II, the lasting bonds of friendship created as liberators of the Netherlands, and the strength of Canadians as allies, we also want to acknowledge all of those Canadians serving today in the Canadian Armed Forces and their continued work to bring stability and peace to our world. Thank you to all of those who serve our country and all the families who support them.
Thank you, Councillor Principe. Okay, explanation of public hearing. Before I do that, I also want to talk a little about expectations during these meetings. So before we begin our discussion, I want to share my expectations for the conduct of everyone participating to ensure a safe and inclusive environment and workplace. These expectations apply equally to both in-person and virtual attendees. Hearing from the public is an important part of Council's process to ensure that we hear the full diversity of opinions that exists in our community. As meeting chair, I have a responsibility to ensure the safety of all participants in today's meeting. As part of that responsibility, inappropriate comments or gestures will not be tolerated. If they occur, I will direct the clerk to immediately remove anyone engaging in such behavior. The type of behavior that will result in the removal from the meeting includes making disrespectful comments directed at individual staff members or other public speakers, or using profane language. Responsive behaviors to show support or dissent, such as shouting, cheering, clapping, or using the chat or emotion response features in the Google Meet are also not permitted. I will not provide any additional warnings, and once removed, the person will not be permitted to rejoin the meeting. This meeting is being live streamed, and everyone is welcome to view the live stream online. Again, my role as chair is not to moderate the nature of the content being discussed, but to ensure chamber behaviors are maintained to support a safe, respectful, and neutral space for my colleagues, city employees, and the public. I thank everyone in advance for your respectful participation in today's discussion. Now, moving on to the explanation of the public hearing process. The clerk will call out the bylaws, and I will call out the names of people registered to speak. Council will then select the bylaws they wish to discuss and vote on any bylaws that have not been selected for discussion. Council will then deal with each of the bylaws that were selected for discussion and debate. For each item, administration will first provide a presentation. Members of the public who register to speak will then be invited to make their presentations in panels. The first panel will be those in favor, followed by a panel of those opposed, continuing in that order until everyone has been heard. Each person will have 5 minutes to make comments. The clerk will run the official timer in council chamber. The timer lights on the podiums will be green for the first 4 minutes, turn yellow when there's 1 minute remaining, and flash red when the 5 minutes are up. If you're participating virtually, there's a virtual timer on the Google Meet. You may wish to use a timer of your own. When everyone in your panel has made a presentation, members of council may ask questions of you or other panel members. After hearing from the public, council may ask questions of administration. After all questions of administration have concluded, I will ask council if they wish to ask any further questions of those who presented in the response to new information that may have arisen during the public hearing. Thereafter, council may close the public hearing and debate the bylaw. If participating virtually, please remember to mute your microphone when you are not speaking. If experiencing any technical difficulties, please reach out to the office of the city clerk using the contact information provided in your confirmation of registration or at city.clerk@edmonton.ca. If you're here with us in person, city staff will guide you to your seat when it's time to hear from your panel. Clerk, may you please call the bylaws?
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.1, Bylaw 21142, to allow for infrastructure systems and facilities that provide a public benefit and update the existing DC2 to align with the zoning bylaw 20001, Greenview and Hillview?
In favor, we have Nicole Wolf to answer questions only, City of Edmonton, joining remotely. Nicole, are you there?
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Becky Redford to answer questions only, City of Edmonton in person.
I am here.
Virtually, okay. Okay, remote. Steve Schmidt to answer questions only, City of Edmonton in person.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. You're remote. Okay, no one is in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.2, Bylaw 21092, to allow for small and medium-scale housing, parkland, natural areas, and public infrastructure meltwater?
In favor, we have Stephen Yu to answer questions only, Investic Consulting Limited in person. There you are. And Chris Nicholas to answer questions only, NAC Land in person. Virtual? Chris, are you there? Okay. No one is in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.3, Bylaw 21140, to close a portion of Alley Garapi?
In favor, we have Nicole Wolf to answer questions only, City of Edmonton joining remotely. And in opposition, we have Esling Ealing in remote. Esling Ealing, are you there? How about Justine Barber in person? There you are, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Items 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, and 3.7 will be dealt with together. Is there anyone here to speak to Bylaw 21145 to allow for commercial and residential uses, a main street area, and provide an interface with the natural area that will allow for natural surveillance and connectivity, Stillwater? Charter Bylaw 21151 to amend. My apologies.
We skipped 3.4, right?
My apologies.
We'll go back to
We will only be asking for speakers for item 3.4.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Okay. 3.4, in favor, we have Chet Demensky to answer questions only, Cameron Corporation in person. There you are. And Yolanda Liu, Stantec in person. There you are. And no one is in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor. Items 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, and 3.8 will be dealt with together. Is there anyone here to speak to Charter Bylaw 21151 to amend the West Henday District Plan, Bylaw 21152 to amend the Riverview Area Structure Plan, Bylaw 21153 to amend the Stillwater Neighborhood Structure Plan, or Bylaw 21154 to allow for a range of small to medium-scale housing and smaller-scale parks and amenities, Stillwater?
In favor, we have Chris Davies to answer questions only, Davies Consulting Group in person. There you are. Jamie Kitlarchuk to answer questions only, Colico in person. There you are. and no one is in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.9, Bylaw 21141, to close a portion of 108 Avenue Northwest, Macaulay?
We have in favor Nicole Wolf to answer questions only, City of Edmonton joining remotely. Becky Bedford to answer questions only, City of Edmonton as well remotely. And Steve Schmitz to answer questions only, City of Edmonton as well as joining remotely. And no one is in opposition.
Ma-
There are people in opposition?
Mayor, we just had a request to speak come in.
Okay,
In
can you-
opposition for this item. The name is Edmund Kwan.
Edwin?
Edmund.
Edmund. Okay, Edmund Kwan, you're here, right? In opposition? Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.10, Bylaw 21096, to allow for small-scale mixed-use development, Highlands?
in favor, Aman Hamid on behalf of Squinder Bengali. There you are, thank you. In opposition, we have Craig Corbett joining remotely. No, Nate Box in person. There you are. Jeff Allen in person. There you are. Deborah Perker remotely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Items 3.11 and 3.12 will be dealt with together. Is there anyone here to speak to Bylaw 21117 to amend the Crystalina Nera West Neighborhood Structure Plan, or Bylaw 21118 to allow for a range of small-scale housing or for smaller-scale parks and amenities, Crystalina Nera West?
In favor, Chris Davies from Davies Consulting Group in person, and Paul Alfonso to answer questions only, Welcome Homes in person. There you are. And no one is in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.13, Bylaw 21148, to allow to close a portion of alley, Baldwin and Delwood?
In favor, Nicole Wolf to answer questions only, City of Edmonton joining remotely. Becky Redford to answer questions only, City of Edmonton joining remotely. Steve Schmitz to answer questions only, City of Edmonton joining remotely. And Craig Walwam to answer questions only, City of Edmonton remotely. Craig, you there?
Yeah, I'm here remotely.
Thank you. And in opposition, we have Gerald Beland in person or remotely? No. How about Margaret Beland in person or remotely? Nope.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.14, Bylaw 21150, to allow for medium-scale housing, Meadowlark Park?
We have in favor Gagan Malhotra to answer questions only remotely. Gagan, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Sabia Mani to answer questions only remotely.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. And in opposition, we have Diane Karlowick joining remotely. Diane, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. David Ballin in person. Thank you. Jane Herrick in person or remotely. No. Robert Gold remotely.
Yes,
Robert,
I'm here.
you see, are you there? Okay.
Thank-
I'm sorry, my name is Song Lin. I'm the architect, and also I registered to answer the question online.
I'm sorry, which item?
The 3.14, the item that we just discussed.
Okay, well, I see. That's Song Lin Pan,
Yep, that's me.
and you were in favor?
In favor, and also I answer question only.
Okay, questions only, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.15, Bylaw 21149?
Sorry, Anton Perchi, for item 3.14, attending remotely, opposed.
I'll add that now. Thank you, Anton. Please now carry on to, is there anyone else we're missing on 3.14? Nope, we'll carry on to 3.15.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.15, Bylaw 21149, to allow for the continued development of comprehensively planned continuing care retirement community, Donsdale?
In favor, we have April Wojcik, Touchmark Senior Living in person. There you are. And in opposition, we have Iris Kirshner in person or remote? No. How about Erin Field? Erin Field. Person or remote? No. Diane Germain in person or remote? Okay, nope.
Thank you, Mayor. Items 3.16 and 3.17 will be dealt with together. Is there anyone here to speak to Bylaw 21155 to close a portion of Road Macaulay, or Bylaw 21156 to allow for smaller scale parks and amenities, Macaulay?
In favor, Nicole Wolf to answer questions only, City of Edmonton joining remotely. Neil,
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, we will come,
Okay.
Iris, are you there for 3 point?
Yeah, us seniors, we don't know how to unmute ourselves. I thought you were going to do it, so we're waving, but you can't see us. We're just waiting to see where we're going to end up time-wise, because it's a long day for us, so.
No
we're
worries, so you're there, is Erin Field and Diane Germain are there too?
Yeah,
You're all together, okay, definitely, we'll definitely come back to you when we get to that item, okay?
thank you.
Thanks.
Do you know when it will be?
Don't know yet. We will make sure clerk, somebody from clerk's office get back to you about approximate timing.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
No worries. Go ahead. And we were on 3.16, 3.17. Nicole Wolf, City of Edmonton joining remotely, and Neil Ozaduk to answer questions only, City of Edmonton in person. There you are. Janice Lee to answer questions only, City of Edmonton in person. Yep, thank you. And Suzanne Young to answer questions only, City of Edmonton remotely. Suzanne's you there? No? Okay.
I am, Mayor.
Oh,
Good
there
morning.
you, thank you. Okay. And no one is in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor. Items 3.18 and 3.19 will be dealt with together. Is there anyone here to speak to Charter Bylaw 21160 to amend the Southeast District Plan, or Bylaw 21159 to allow for multi-unit residential development up to approximately 6 stories, King Edward Park?
In favor, we have Elise Stametisik, V3 Companies of Canada in person. There you are. And Marie Totland to answer questions only, or Arbutus Properties in person. There you are, and no one is in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor. Items 3.20, 3.21, and 3.22 will be dealt with together. Is there anyone here to speak to Bylaw 21129 to amend the Grange Area Structure Plan, or Bylaw 21130 to amend the Granville Neighborhood Structure Plan, or Bylaw 21131 to allow for a variety of commercial businesses and medium-scale housing, Granville?
In favor, we have Ren and Sons to answer questions only. Clarity Development Advisory in person.
Good morning, I'm online and I actually do have a presentation to make.
Okay, remote. Dave Onishenko to answer questions only. Clarity Development Advisory in person. Presentation, thank you. And David Ben Jestorf to answer questions only. Eldritch Land remote.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And in opposition, we have Chris Benson remote.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, as well as Justin Peng remote.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.23, Charter Bylaw 21144, to amend the city plan?
There's no one in favor and there's no one in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor. Items 3.24, 3.25, 3.26, and 3.27 will be dealt with together. Is there anyone here to speak to Charter Bylaw 21143 to amend the Southeast District Plan, Bylaw 21123 to amend the Maple Ridge Industrial Area Structure Plan, Bylaw 21124 to amend the North Saskatchewan River Valley Area Redevelopment Plan, or Bylaw 21125 to enable the relocation and future preservation of a creek and natural area, as well as to allow for the continued use of a transmission line and existing stormwater management facility, Southwest Industrial.
Okay, all right, just a little bit of clarity here. So we have new registered speakers on this item because this item was referred to here from last public hearing. So new registered speakers are Alyssa Starmetsic, VC Companies of Canada in person, there you are. Robin Holstein, Neope, Edmonton chapter. Neope.
Correct, I'm online.
Sorry, remote, yes, sorry. Heather Amiralt, Stantec remote.
I'm here.
Thank you. And speakers that made presentations and or answered questions on April 28th, 2025 were Mark Edwards. Mark, are you here? There you are. Nick Price to answer questions only, VC Companies of Canada. Thank you. Megan Chisholm to answer questions only. There you are. And from Stantec, sorry. Zoe Rizak to answer questions only, Stantec in person. And then we have in opposition new registered speakers. Patsy Cottrell, remote.
Present.
Thank you.
Online.
Linda Duncan, North Saskatchewan River Valley Conservation Society, remote.
Yes, I'm remote.
And Ryan Jake, remote.
Good morning.
Thank you. And speakers that made presentations and or answered questions on April 28th, 2025 were Raquel Firo. Are you there, Rocky? No. Christine Kowalchuk, Edmonton River
Yes,
Valley.
online.
Thank-
Eric Gormley and Raquel Farrow are online. Thanks.
Eric Gormley is there as well, Eric. And Sherry Heschuk. Okay, all right. Okay.
It's Christine Kowalczyk. I'm here as well, just to let you know.
Yes,
Thank you.
I got it. Thank you, Christine. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.28, Bylaw 21121, to allow for light to medium industrial developments, small commercial businesses, and a religious assembly on a developed site, Coronet Industrial?
We have in favor Marcelo Figueira to answer questions only, Trudeau Urbani in person. There you are. And no one is in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor.
So, sorry, Marcelo, you want to make a presentation even though there's no one in opposition? If selected. Oh, it was selected. Oh, okay, yeah, got it. Presentation. All right. Please
Thank
carry
you,
on.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.29, Bylaw 21137, to allow for a range of small to medium-scale housing, Strathcona?
Andrew, in favor, Andrew Olson. Ennis in person. There you are. And in opposition, Katie Warwa. In remote. There you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.30, Bylaw 21133, to allow for a range of small to medium-scale housing, McKernan?
In favor, Adam Young, Everfor Studio Limited in person. There you are. William Yin, Everfor Studio Limited in person. There you are. Don Ann, Everfor Studio Limited in person. Remote. Okay.
Remote, yes.
Thank you. Ishan Kang, Everflow Studio in person. There you are. Shiji Chang in person. Thank you for Everflow Studio Limited. Quinn Bin Lee, Everflow Studio in person. Later? Okay. Bradley Thiessen, remote. Jacob DeWong, remote.
Hello.
Thank you. And in opposition, Robert Kearns, remote. Robert, are you? Thank you. Charlene Weiss, in person or remote.
Hi, I'm remote.
Okay, thank you, Charlene. Louisa Sue, in person or remote? Oh. Lindsay Vanstone, remote?
Hello.
Thank you. Felix Miar Stevenson, remote? No.
Yes, I'm remote, sorry.
That's Felix, thank you.
Yes, Felix.
Got it, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Just hold on, just wait, give me 1 second. Can you come down to the clerk, please, give your name? So are you Justine Barber? Right? And Justine Barber is not registered to speak on 3.3, right?
We will have her name removed from 3.3 and added as opposed under item 3.30.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that on 3.3, Justine is not speaking on that item in opposition. And I want to confirm Ms. Essling Eling is there on 3.3. Okay, so no one is there, says no one is in opposition to that item. Okay, and we will come back to 3.30. Okay. And we will add Justine Barber to item 3.30, right? Okay, please carry on.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anyone here to speak to item 3.31, Bylaw 21136, to allow for a daycare and small-scale residential development, Woodcroft?
We have in favor Marcelo Figueira, Trudeau Urbani in person, and Jennifer Sinoga, Little B Academy in person. There you are. And no one is in opposition. Wow, that was a long list. Oh. Well, we got through it. Now to the fun part of the work, which is welcome some students. Right on. We have students with us from Millwoods Christian School, grade 3 class. Little ones. Wave, come on, wave to us. And they are here with their teacher, Kema. There you are. And your ward counselor is Counselor Tang from Ward Carihio. Are you having fun at City Hall? That's like a big fun, lot of fun. And are you doing your mock consult too? They are? Grade 3? Wow, that is impressive. Have you selected your mayor yet? You have? Your worship, how are you? You're doing good. Yeah, I like that thumbs up. Yeah. You want to come to the podium? Yeah, come to the podium. I'm going to ask you some questions. Well, first tell us your name.
My name is Divine.
Divine, what are you going to be talking about at your mock consult?
So we have trees near a fence, and we're talking about if we should make it a naturalized site or if we should make it into something else.
Okay. And you're going to be discussing that today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you let us know what your decision is going to be?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Because we definitely want to know what the grade 3 class folks are thinking about their city, right? Cool. Nice to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, that was the fun part. Now we're back to not so much fun part, which is talking about bylaws, which is fun part too, right? So we get to hear from public and from both sides. All right, now we go to exemptions. Who would like to exempt what? Oh, there's a request to withdraw 3.3. Oh, it's been selected, okay. Okay, all right, so let's go to exemptions. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Just pulling it up. I'd like to pull 3.3 so that we can properly withdraw that. I also understand Councillor Stevenson has some questions on 3.4, so I'll grab that. I'll also grab items 3.14, the Meadowlark Park item, 3.15.
Just slow down. I got to flip the pages. 3.14?
Yes, 3.14.
Okay.
3.15, the Donsdale item.
Okay.
And 3.20, 3.21, and 3.22, the Granville item.
Okay, 320, 321, 322, they're cross-referenced, okay?
Yeah. And that's all for me, although on item 3.3, because there's a request to withdraw, I would ask council, when we're done selecting, we just move that forward so we can just take care of that item.
Okay,
And their
all
request.
right.
Thank you.
Councillor Salvador,
310, please.
310. That is it. Councillor Wright.
If I can select 3.24, 3.25, 3.26, 3.27, so we can talk about those trees.
324, 25, 26, 27.
And I just want to double check on 3.2, we didn't have any in opposition. So, okay, that'll be it then. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Jans.
Thank you. 3.29, I believe Councillor Stevenson, you had selected 3.28. I'm not sure if it's resolved or not, or if I should, nope, okay, so
Nope.
you'll select that one.
Sorry, 328.
No, I'm not going to select 328.
Oh, you're not.
Councillor Stevenson will. I'll take 3.29 and 330.
Okay. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you. I will grab 3.28.
3.2, just hold on. Okay, 3.28, okay.
And also 3.9, as I believe you had a speaker register.
3.9, okay. Councillor Principe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will select item 3.11,
3.11,
3.12. They must be dealt with together.
yep.
3.13,
Okay,
and 3.23.
3.23. Okay. So 3.3, 3.4, 3.9, 3.10, 3.11, 3.12, 3.13, 3.14, 3.15, 3.20, 3.21, 3.22, 3.23, 3.24, 3.25, 3.26, 3.27, 3.28, 3.29, and 3.30 are selected. Okay, Councillor Cartmel, you got it, right?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Mayor Soki. I will move closure of the public hearing on items 3.1, 3.2, 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, 3.16, 3.17, 3.18, 3.19, and 3.31.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
Mayor Soki, I'll move first reading of the aforementioned items.
Second.
Please vote. Display the votes, please. That is carried.
Mayor Soki, I'll move second reading of the aforementioned items.
Second.
Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
Mayor Sohi, I'll move consideration of third reading of the aforementioned items.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
Mayor Sohi, I will move third and final reading of Bylaw 21142, Bylaw 21092, Charter Bylaw 21151, Bylaw 21152, Bylaw 21153, Bylaw 21154, Bylaw 21155, Bylaw 21156, Charter Bylaw 21160, Bylaw 21159, and Bylaw 21136.
Second.
Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Okay, let's bring forward 3.3 so we can deal with that. Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, I'll move that we bring forward item 3.3 so we can deal with it to be withdrawn.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, so, and this is where we don't get to see this very often. Do I just move it or refer it back, move it be withdrawn?
Clerk?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll move the withdrawal of item 3.3. And maybe just a brief explanation, once the motion's seconded from administration as to why it's being withdrawn.
Yeah, Councillor Knack seconded it. So you can ask that questions to admin now.
Great, so I know we had speakers registered in opposition, and it would be helpful just to hear why this withdrawal request came forward, and if or when speakers may anticipate this coming back, if at all. Is there anyone that can speak to that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies, Councillor. The applicant is looking to make some changes to their application. We don't have an estimated time for the comeback.
Okay, but if it does come back, they would have to redo the circulation on the closure, correct?
That's correct. All the proper procedures will be followed. Advertising will be redone. Notifications will be redone.
Great, thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Okay, now please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. All right, so we will do that. And we will start with 3.24, 3.25, 3.26, 3.27, then follow up with 3.28, 3.29, and 3.30 items that were postponed from April 28th. We will deal with those items first.
Mayor, may we please have a motion to bring those forward?
Okay, well, before we do that, then let me welcome another fun thing to do here, which is another class from, the same school, Millwoods Christian School, grade 3 class again. That's a big class. And they are here with their teacher, Mrs. N. Dyke, right? And your ward counselor is Counselor Tang, Ward Gary EO. How are you doing? Are you having fun? Well, not as much fun as your last class. They gave us a big thumbs up like this. And their bodies moved too, right? Can you do that too? Here we go. Right on. No, that's like fun. Okay, are you also doing your mock council too? And have you selected your mayor? Who is your mayor? Oh, there you are. Oh, hi. Mayor, your worship, how are you? You want to come down to the podium? Come down to the podium, yes. You got to do that if you got to be the mayor. Well, tell us your name first.
Addie,
Eddie, what are you going to be talking about at your mock council?
we were talking about whether the trees next to the football field should become a naturalized site or not.
Okay, so it's the same topic. Well, it will be very interesting if we come to the same conclusion. Both, they have already decided? You already made a decision? And the previous class made the decision as well? I forgot to ask them. Okay, they didn't. Okay, you tell us what your decision was then.
It was not to. It was against.
Not to save the trees?
Not to save the trees.
Not to save the trees. Oh, I don't think Councilor Wright is going to be happy about that, right? Cool. Thank you so much for letting us know, and thank you so much for joining us. Cool. Cool. All right. Okay, can someone now please move a motion to bring all those items, can we do them all together? All those items forward so we can deal with them.
So moved. Second.
Hey, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Now we can start with the items 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, 2.27. They're all cross-referenced, dealt together, sorry. And is there going to be a presentation from administration on this, right? Because some of the discussion took place, so clerk, help me how we're going to proceed with this. We'll start all over again. Maybe to our legal counsel.
So, Mr. Mayor, the public hearing is in process. The process can simply carry on if you wish. If you want a reminder of a presentation, that would be fine. It was at the point of questions of administration were partially done but not completed. I would recommend that you would finish questions of administration and then you would hear from your new speakers. Then if there's more questions of administration, of course, that would
Okay,
be
so
appropriate
we will start with that. So council members, questions to administration on remaining questions, and we'll go to new speakers. Councilor Wright.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Mr. Johnson, can we then also go back and ask questions of the previous speakers?
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a reset with new people registered to speak. You have availability to ask questions of any of the speakers.
Okay, okay.
In those two panels of in favor and opposed.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll just, to administration then, I guess. Thank you for providing the environmental impact assessment, or make that public for everybody. Whoops. I guess I'm torn with whether we're doing this for proper land use or for economic development, and I just want to go back to the industrial action plan. In the report, it says that we want to improve things for different industrial sectors. In the industrial action plan, I don't see where like warehousing would be, because that seems to be what the primary use is right now around that area. So how does this tie into the industrial sectors we're trying to promote?
This would be looking at logistics would be the title it's under, and I can, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity. And then again, the industrial action plan talks about 26% of the 133, I think, hectares that we have available is ready for development. How much of that is in the southeast?
I don't have the number specific to the southeast.
Okay.
I can find that for you, Councillor.
Okay.
Councillor, just to clarify, it's Travis here in the corner here. It's 2.6% out of the industrial area of Edmonton that's shovel-ready. So just to clarify, there's a big difference between 2.6 and 26%.
Oh, because, well, the industrial action plan, I'm looking at there's no page number that I can see, says 26% of these lands are ready.
So I think there's, in terms of industrial readiness, there's planned areas, there's future planned areas, and then there's the shovel-ready part. And I don't have the industrial action plan right in front of me, but it is, you do. So I do believe that 26% is the correct, but also in further context, it's 2.6% of the land as a total is shovel-ready, which means it can be built on today.
So Councillor just pulled it up. It's reflecting that 26% of the lands are ready for developers to develop to a shovel-ready state is 26%.
Oh, okay, but of the 133 hectares that are shovel-ready, that's only 2.6%?
No, the 133 represents 2.6% of the 3,300 hectares as a total.
Okay, of the total industrial lands. Okay,
Correct.
gotcha now. Okay, sorry, thank you very much for that. Because well, yeah. And what percentage of our industrial lands are either vacant or are shovel-ready?
I have a broader breakdown. I
Okay.
didn't do it based on percent, but I have the hectares and then the approximate years for uptake,
Okay.
which is based on our annual average. So our total supply is approximately 78 years if you look at all unserviced industrial land.
Unserviced, okay.
If we look at the desirable areas or areas that developers are interested in actively, we're looking at less than 20 years. And if you're looking at area that is ready for developers to bring to a shovel-ready state, so these are areas that have the planning in effect and are closer to that point where developers can start to invest some money into infrastructure, we're looking at, again, less than 20 years. And then for shovel-ready land specifically, we're at less than 2 years of supply available. And to be, just to, as a reminder, the shovel-ready is essentially that a developer could walk in and apply for a development permit after they've purchased that land.
Okay. But then there's another portion, sorry, I'm running out of time. So shovel-ready, they've got the servicing and everything in place, is that right? Less than 2 years?
Shovel-ready would have servicing in place.
Okay, I'll come back because I have some more questions on this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to follow through on some questions I had the other time, and it's really around sort of the counterfactual. So if this rezoning doesn't go forward, what tools or protections? So I understand that the caveat that's registered on title would become moot. It was only sort of during these negotiations that it applied. Another tool that we often have as a city is getting ER or MR through subdivision. Is that an option in this case?
Thank you, Councillor. And Huizenga over here. So I apologize, there was some confusion last time over the way that the restrictive covenant was being applied. The restrictive covenant is here. We have the option of discharging that in the future. We are only required to discharge the restrictive covenant if it meets all of the obligations within, and that would be if the decision is made to move forward and they've made the changes, the approval from the province is in place, and we have signed engineering drawings, and the creek is dedicated as environmental reserve. If you, as council, make a decision to not relocate the creek, we are not obligated to remove the restrictive covenant on the existing one. However, at that point, we would have other tools that we could also choose to make use of. So the creek will be protected beyond the negotiation period of this, if your decision was to reject the application in front of you.
Okay, so sort of the trees would be protected, the creek would be protected, but there would be no requirement for restoration, for example. It could continue to be used as a pipe laydown space, like the areas that are currently used?
The areas that are being protected are not currently being used for those purposes.
If clerks could bring slide 12 up, please. So just as that slide's coming up, the restrictive covenant protects the treed area on either side of the creek within the property. There's no laydown yard happening in that location, and the restrictive covenant would prevent that if the realignment did not proceed.
Okay, I think what I'm getting at though is that dirt road that's bisecting the creek, that gravel area that's north of the creek, that all would remain as is currently.
That's correct.
Okay. So as a city, we wouldn't have any tools to require any sort of restoration or deculverting of the creek?
Not specifically that I'm aware of.
Okay. And then could you talk me through subdivision as well?
The subdivision as it has proceeded thus far?
Yes, I'm just,
Yep.
yeah.
If the clerks could pull up slide 14, please. Thank you. So phase 1 of the project was approved and has been registered in 2024. That was the point in time in which we also collected the cash in lieu. At that time, because we were aware of the pending submission for phase 2 to the north, which is also connected and includes the phase 2 in the south, that is essentially on hold until this decision has been made.
And so could you talk me through the two scenarios? So if we approve the rezoning, subdivision will move forward, and then we would collect the new alignment of the creek as MR?
ER.
Of ER, sorry,
Yeah.
okay.
And
And then if it doesn't proceed, it looks like there would still be a subdivision for phase 2. So would we not be able to get the current alignment as ER?
The reason that ER was not used was because it is more difficult to remove that designation, and because this decision was pending, we used the tool that was available at the time that made the decision available to you in the most convenient way. I can let Jamie add some clarity to that.
Yeah, Councillor, on a future subdivision, there would be, assuming this doesn't pass and they come in for future subdivision, there would be a clear negotiation on whether that current alignment of the creek comes as environmental reserve. That is still an option, that has still been preserved. It just isn't taking place at this point. Environmental reserve can't be removed. And so if we had put that environmental reserve on, we would have disallowed council from making the decision before them today. That's why that was done in that fashion.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Rutherford.
Yeah, I guess I want to focus in on some of the comments in the report related to the trade-offs, which I agree with the speakers from last week in opposition of, I hate this dichotomy of a trade-off. I know we have to make trade-offs at times, but it does seem like economics and environment are sometimes, as is the case today, seeming to be at odds. The report talked about how if the creek is relocated, and then there has to be sort of rehabilitation of the trees, like with new planting and the sort of for the ecosystem to sort of revegetate. I think it was like around 20 years was the approximation.
That sounds correct.
So I guess where I'm coming from is, do we have has anybody in like our ecological team within the city looked at the current habitat?
Yes, it was reviewed through the EIA. There were also site visits that took place. The reports that were submitted included biological reports, so you've got the types of species that were found, both in plants as well as animals, and they've reviewed the plan on how to remediate that as well. Is there something more specific? The EIA that was submitted was fulsome. It was, it included the information that would be expected and required at this phase.
Yeah, I guess I didn't fully understand what happens to all of those, that ecology in the 20 years, and also recognizing the report also acknowledged that the ecology would likely not return to the same ecology. Maybe better, maybe worse, we don't know, but.
The ecology, I guess I'm trying to think of a way to say this, like the existing is fully there, fully functioning, and what our team was able to do is to negotiate and work with the applicant to achieve a better outcome after those years. And so, for example, having those documents the EIA provided allowed us to understand what was being lost, what was being removed, and then how best to ensure that what was coming back would be in the best condition as we moved forward. So for instance, retaining the extra 1.5 hectares of wildlife, or as a wildlife refuge, as well as a seed bank, so that restoration could draw on existing local soils, seeds, what was already there, was something that we were able to evaluate and bring forward. Same with the negotiation to extend the FAC period, improve buffering areas, and the plan to increase the variety of plants that was already there.
Yeah, because what I'm grappling with is like, and I think it's what you've been grappling with through this file up to it coming to public hearing, is you have an existing ecology that will be disrupted. And in the long term, it will likely be better. And we also achieve some economic outcomes with unlocking land industrially.
I don't know that we would say in the long term it will be better. I think in the long term it will be there and it
Well,
will
it'll be
provide
protected.
value and it
It'll
will
be
be protected.
Protected because it will be
Yes.
city.
And in the long term, you will have both the economic piece as well as that newly protected
But I think
environmental piece.
the question for me, and what I'm grappling with in this public hearing, is what's the value of the existing ecology and the unknown? So I'm talking out loud, I'm just trying to tell you what I'm grappling with, and I know it's all the things you've been grappling with. So I just want to confirm for myself, for my decision-making, if this is rejected, if it does not pass today, it would trigger a subdivision.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. The applicant would have the opportunity to proceed with the existing subdivision, protect the creek and its existing alignment.
I remember something in the conversation at the last meeting about if this wasn't to proceed, I think it was a question to the applicant that they would proceed with subdivision, which would trigger this.
Ultimately, either way, we will get the ER, whether it's the new alignment or the existing alignment.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Knack.
Thank you, Mayor Sohi. So on that point, the difference is if we have existing alignment, it's underutilized industrial land because they won't be able to build out into the full plan that they wanted to, which is part of your trade-off argument. I want to follow up a little bit on Councillor Rutherford's question. So appreciating that would be the outcome if we said no, we would be looking at underutilized industrial land. There's really no other way to use the available space than something like a, basic storage yard, something like that. We have lots of that in our city. But I want to ask the question of, do we have a sense of what we would do? So I've heard the restrictive covenant would still stay on if we said no. My guess is, and I don't know, I'm going to ask questions and look to my left, is would the city then, beyond the restrictive covenant, they would, like the city, we would want to actually acquire this land, would we not? And then do additional work to enhance the existing state of that space.
In terms of the ownership, I think the understanding is there's no particular benefit to the applicant continuing to own the land that they can't do anything. So they don't have the desire to own it,
Correct.
so we would also want that.
And there would be a desire for the city to own it, because then we could further protect it beyond a covenant. We would be able to zone it and then do upgrades to it if we felt there were upgrades that were needed.
And those would be based on budget decisions and priorities, et cetera.
So setting aside the budget piece, because I don't think that would be relevant, that to me is a question, because I'm hearing we don't know for sure if it could be better if we realign it. If we were to ultimately acquire this land through saying no, it is likely, budget dependent, that we would be doing things to further enhance the ecology of that site. If it's not perfect today, we would want to make it better than what it is today, pending a budgetary conversation.
Yeah, council, there is no budget to restore.
I hear that.
Yeah.
But in a perfect world where money was not an issue, because we can't think about that, we're thinking about an end state of what is the best use of this land. This land, in an enhanced form, in its current location, arguably is better, right? Because then you're not, the challenge is, but yeah, and because if we go this route, then we likely get all of the upgrades paid for and all of this stuff that we don't have to do, but I can't use that as a factor, because they would be applicant would be paying for all of these upgrades, but I shouldn't be thinking about that.
Correct. Council, what we're looking at here is the proposal for a new creek being proposed and paid for by a developer.
Yep.
Or restrictive covenant versus ownership of this portion. Now, ownership generally isn't at play at a public hearing, you all know that, but the acquisition of reserves is, and that is what we're talking about here. So I'm okay with that notion. And yes, restoration and improvement of currently natural area is always better than creating new.
And that is something we should be thinking about as a collective here, recognizing we don't know how we would pay for it, but that would be something we would want to be thinking about if we were to hold on to this existing creek, that there would likely be an intent for us as a corporation to want to do more with the existing creek site.
Council, I think maybe the safe avenue on this, or the answer to that is, if you keep the retaining creek, that leaves the door open for discussion of what to do with that land by the city in the future.
Okay.
Does that, so it gives you that option, rather than trying to decide on that today, or decide which is better. What it does is opens that door for you to have that conversation.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Councillor, just to add to that, in terms of the decision in front of you today, you have an existing creek that through various means the city looks to protect, whether it's an RC or through the subdivision, the ER or the MR. We don't leave ER or MR on the table in terms of our application process. The other side of that decision is you have a man-made creek, which inherently is not as good as the natural piece, which is outlined in the report for all the reasons why. Along with that man-made creek, you have a consolidated parcel that allows more industrial development and more efficient use of the land. So in terms of balancing the scales, I don't want to oversimplify it, but I think that's the choice in front of you today, is maintain the natural system as is today versus an altered state with a consolidated, more efficient parcel for development.
I'm out of time. Thank you. I'm happy to move a second round.
Second.
Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. All right, Councillor Wright, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So this parcel is what, about 1.5 hectares?
Sorry, Counselor, just give me one moment for that one. I've dropped it out of my head. It is larger than 1.5 hectares, though.
Oh, I thought I'd heard you in a previous response talking about 1.5, so that's where I'm.
Yeah, that was the additional, that was the area to be saved as the existing natural area that was going to be retained.
Okay.
So 6.97 hectares.
Okay, so 6.9. How much, okay, so we're asking, looking at the trade-off between environmental and economical, how much, I guess, how much is that 6.9 hectares then? What's that going to give us in an economic benefit, like, overall?
Sorry, the ER is the environmental area, the creek is 6.9 hectares.
Okay. So how much developable land will we be left with then?
With the proposal, we'll have about at the ASP level, we'll have an increase of 5 hectares for medium industrial, about a decrease about half a hectare at the ASP level. So those are the changes. We're gaining about 5 hectares of medium industrial land.
So looking at the whole big picture of our industrial action plan, how much of an impact is it going to be?
This expands our shovel-ready industrial land, it expands the land available for servicing by 4.9 hectares and creates that larger.
What percentage is that? Like, I just want to know what.
At a citywide scale, Councillor, it's obviously a small amount, but the key message or the key element of this application is the consolidation of the land, and then the usability of like the shovel readiness of that land, and then the value that it brings back through jobs and economic development. So that's the percentage is small citywide.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not going to have a huge impact citywide, and there's other developable land that would be available.
Could the clerks bring up slide 13?
Is that the one that had the phase 1 and phase 2? Because I also want to ask questions on that.
No, this one is about the different levels of readiness. So just in terms of the kind of local area here, the areas in white are fully developed or developed industrial land. The orange areas are fully serviced. The purple areas, like this part of the site, are partially serviced, and then the areas in red are shovel-ready. And so when we're talking about bringing that together, it's really enhancing and enabling a concentration in an area that's starting to see some uplift happening.
Okay. Oh, it's uplift is happening. So if we look at the red area at the bottom right there, there's probably 6 or 7 warehouses already fully, if not close to fully constructed. I took a drive out there yesterday just to confirm that. So I mean, there is warehousing space available already in that area. So I don't know, do we need more there right now?
So, Councillor, just to answer your question about percentage or citywide, and then I'll put that into a little bit of context. So in terms of shovel-ready land, with this adding about 4.9 hectares to that shovel readiness, it represents 3 to 4% of the citywide scale in terms of shovel-ready in addition to what's there today. So it is, in terms of citywide, it may seem small, but it is significant in terms of adding that 3 to 4%. And just to back this up a little bit, related to similar decisions that council makes around density of housing. If you were to look at every single application in terms of we're adding 5 to 10 more units on a row house, in terms of a citywide scale, that is in the 0.00 percentage scale. So I would just caution in terms of, or maybe there's another perspective in terms of, it's not necessarily always a citywide scale that we're looking at in terms of achieving our goals, but each addition to it adds to that piece. So adding that 3 to 4% citywide is a significant addition.
Okay, my time is up. Okay, I think maybe I'll just wait and listen to the other speakers that have registered and ask questions then.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions of administration at this time. So my understanding, Mr. Johnson will go to hearing from new speakers who have registered?
Yes, you should give the 5 minutes to those who have now registered to speak, and then you could ask questions of that entire panel in favor and then opposed.
Okay, great. So new registered speakers in favor. I have Eliza Stamatakis. You can come on down. The clerks will help you to your chair. Robin Holstein. Neop. You're online? Robin, are you there?
Correct, yes, online.
Hi there. And Heather Amaro from Stantec.
I'm online also.
Great, thank you very much. And apologies, just the new speakers in favor or all speakers in favor?
The new speakers in favor is who would be given the 5 minutes. The others have had 5 minutes. Then you can question any.
All of them. Okay, so we'll just start with everyone. Well, let's just bring everyone down to their chairs now, their seats now. So Mark Edwards, I'll invite you to come down. Nick Price, Megan Chisholm, and Zoe Rezak as well. Great, thank you. I'm sorry if it's Eliza or Alyssa, but over to you. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Great. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Elisa Stamatakis, and I am a senior planner with V3 Companies of Canada. I'm here today to provide a higher level context in support of the application to realign a portion of Fulton Creek through these proposed amendments. To clarify, approving these amendments is only the first step. Provincial approvals are still required before any construction, tree removals, or site work can begin. Approving these amendments today does not mean the creek will be realigned tomorrow. Today, we're seeing industrial infill happening in real time, a clear example of redevelopment taking shape where infrastructure and servicing are already in place. We understand that this isn't a simple discussion. From our perspective, the amendments represent a big city building move that supports infill industrial redevelopment in a way that's economically viable, makes use of existing infrastructure, and provides an opportunity to rehabilitate a portion of Fulton Creek as a part of a broader connected environmental system. Next slide, please. Looking more broadly, many portions of Fulton Creek have already been modified via diversions, culverts, and existing development. This section flows through a built-up urban setting in one of Edmonton's long-standing industrial areas. It's surrounded by major transportation infrastructure, Roper Road, the White Mud, and the Henday, which makes this a logical location for industrial investment. The creek is part of a broader ecological network, and the amendments reflect that. This isn't about removal. It's about realigning and restoring this portion of a creek to support both its ecological function and development on land that's already serviced and designated for industrial use. Next slide, please. The image on the screen shows the Maple Ridge ASB transportation network along an arterial of an already built Roper Road extension. Roper Road has long been planned as a transportation corridor to support access and servicing for industrial development in this part of the city. But without the realignment of a portion of this creek, most of the land north of Roper Road of the site remains inaccessible. This means existing infrastructure, investments already made, can't and likely won't ever be fully utilized. The amendments would allow the corridor to function as intended, providing efficient access and servicing, while enabling development that supports jobs, makes use of public investment, and contributes to a stronger non-residential tax base over time. Next slide, please. This slide shows data from the Industrial Investment Action Plan update presented to Council in June 2024. According to this update, only 0.1% of industrial land is shovel-ready, 12.5% could be ready within 5 years, and the rest is 5 to 40 years out, requiring major servicing and a lot of general planning that needs to take place before development can be realized. These amendments allow the city to act now, helping to bring an already serviced land to market. This aligns with city policy and represents fiscally responsible industrial infill that strengthens Edmonton's ability to support balanced assessment growth. Next slide, please. Environmental considerations are obviously part of this conversation as well. There are roughly 9,200 trees on site today, many of which are invasive to the region. Should this project proceed, about 2,300 trees will be retained, around 6,000 trees replanted through the creek restoration, and about 1,365 trees planted across the site. This results in a net increase of tree canopy with improved biodiversity and ecological connectivity. A shared use trail network is also included along Roper Road, 56th Avenue, and on both sides of the realigned creek, enhancing walkability and access for the current and future workforce. Next slide, please. We fully recognize and appreciate that Council is often faced with difficult decisions, balancing environmental priorities with economic growth, fiscal resilience, and infrastructure efficiency. We agree. The natural environment is critical to Edmonton's future, but so is the strength of the non-residential tax base, the ability to provide employment opportunities for a growing population, and the need to make the most of infrastructure investments that have already been made. From our perspective, the proposed amendments reflect a thoughtful, practical approach that achieves this balance. In many ways, this is the kind of decision where all of those priorities can work together. In closing, while these amendments are just one step in a longer process to realign a portion of Fulton Creek, they support the city's ability to bring shovel-ready industrial land to market, rehabilitate a natural feature, grow the non-residential tax base, and maximize infrastructure already in place. As outlined in our application, the proposed amendment aligns with current policy, supports the kind of resilient, balanced growth Edmonton is aiming for. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Well, thank you so much. Before we go to other speakers, I just want to let the other folks know that if you're here for items 3.34 to probably 3.23, we would not get to you before lunch for sure, right? So if you want to, have other things to do, you're welcome to stay. But if you want other things to do, you may want to do that. Okay. Next is Robin Holstein.
Good morning.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. First slide, please. Good morning. My name is Robin Holstein, and I'm the new Executive Director of NAIOP Edmonton. For those of you unfamiliar with NAIOP, we are a commercial real estate development association. NAIOP is here today to support the application in its entirety. NAIOP Edmonton has been a consistent and engaged partner in advancing industrial development in the region as an active contributor to both the development and ongoing implementation of the Industrial Investment Action Plan. NAIOP continues to support strategic growth. The proposed build-out of Fulton Creek aligns directly with the goals outlined in the IAP while leveraging existing infrastructure to maximize investment potential. Fulton Creek Park is a key step to unlocking strategically located high-value industrial land that is essential to Edmonton's economic competitiveness. This proposal directly supports what NAIOP and our members advocate for: efficient, well-planned development that creates jobs, attracts investment, and contributes long-term fiscal stability for the city. Next slide, please. Based on administration's report presented to Council on June 19th, 2024, only 0.1% of Edmonton's industrial land is truly shovel-ready. This site is one of the few that can meet that standard with a modest investment. According to the Industrial Investment Action Plan, land supply is not our only challenge. It's timing and readiness that is critical. Much of the Edmonton industrial lands lack critical infrastructure, such as roads, access to roads, servicing, and utility capacity required to accommodate industrial activity in the near term. The proposed development, by contrast, is strategically located adjacent to existing infrastructure and represents the ready-to-develop opportunity that supports the city's economic growth targets. The remainder of industrial land in the city is years, if not decades, away from market viability. Next slide, please. Approving this application aligns directly with the IIAP's goals to streamline industrial development, to prioritize infrastructure development, and enable a stronger return on public assets. Edmonton needs to remain competitive within the region. The city's already lost market share. Our non-residential assessment base has declined from 72% to 60% of the region's total since 2008. Edmonton's industrial properties generate more than $300 million annually in property tax revenue, yet our industrial tax base is being outpaced by regional neighbors. We must reverse this trend by enabling investment-ready sites like this one. Not supporting this development could send a message that discourages further investment, which would divert opportunities where it is supported by our neighboring municipalities. Next slide, please. Industrial development creates long-term value that benefits everyone. It's cheaper to service than residential growth. It generates more property tax revenue per hectare. It produces high-paying, future-focused employment in logistics, manufacturing, and clean tech. The jobs that result from this type of development, advanced manufacturing, logistics, clean energy, are exactly the sectors targeted in the IAP and Edmonton Global. Next slide, please. The proposed development brings meaningful social value by integrating green space and trail connectivity into an industrial setting. These features help attract labor market and talent and retain recruitment and employment. This also is a competitive advantage to this park specifically when compared against other industrial areas. Next slide, please. Ultimately, this proposal enables industrial development in a fully serviced central corridor, brings rare shovel-ready land to market, something our city urgently lacks, supports the city plan and industrial investment action plan by delivering measurable return on investment and long-term economic value. This is not a trade-off, it's a win for Edmonton. At a time of global uncertainty, when investment decisions are increasingly cautious, Edmonton has a unique opportunity to lead. Supporting this application sends a clear signal to investors. Edmonton is ready to do business. It's an opportunity to say yes to growth and yes to growth that pays for itself, enhances our competitiveness, and balances our tax structure. It's not just about developing land, it's about strengthening the foundation of our city's economy. If this application is not approved, there is a real risk that regional municipal competitors will move faster, mobilize shovel-ready industrial land. Acting now ensures Edmonton stays ahead, offering ready-to-develop land in a fully serviced area and showing that the city is proactive, competitive, and committed to long-term economic growth. This development aligns directly with the priorities of the Industrial Investment Action Plan. We encourage Council to approve this application and help unlock the next chapter in Edmonton's industrial future. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Next, we will go to Heather Emerald from Stendek.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, please.
I'm Heather Amaro. I'm with Stantec. I specialize in channel restoration and realignment, and I am going to try and add some more clarity around how channel realignment works. Next slide, please. This is a picture of a creek that was built about 2 years before the photo was taken. So natural channel designs use various scientific approaches such as reference reaches and hydraulic analysis to develop channel forms that replicate natural water courses. Natural channel designs result in stable channel forms, conveyance of both base flows and flood flows, and they can create aquatic riparian habitat. The design is a collaboration between engineers and biologists and a number of other specialists. Natural channel design incorporates an understanding of channel form and function. Designers study channel forms, channel hydraulics, and habitat potential to support our designs. We also incorporate native species planting plans and often include wetlands in the designs. For the valley planting plan approach, we use zone plantings and we select native species based on predicted moisture regimes within the new valley setting. Next slide, please. This is a little bit about construction. So we are going to make choices that protect downstream environments during the construction process. Our typical approach is to build the new creek first and then reconnect it into the existing channel and reintroduce creek flows into the new channel. Channel construction is most successful when a contractor familiar with channel construction is retained, along with an experienced channel inspector. Where possible, as I mentioned, we build the new sections of channel offline, keeping the existing creek active and productive until the new channel is complete. The construction phase incorporates robust erosion and sediment controls to protect the active channel on site, and we're very careful about managing water, both channel flows and runoff. Before introducing flows into the new channel, we work to establish vegetation and stabilize channel bed and banks. For this particular site, we propose to preserve a portion of the existing channel and its associated riparian vegetation. Next slide, please. A couple of examples so that you can see the process in real life. Edmonton has completed channel alterations in the past to support various municipal goals, such as stormwater management. Mill Creek in southeast Edmonton was historically a heavily modified system, which is very similar to the business park site and Fulton Creek, and has been channelized throughout the decades. The photos on the left side represent a portion of Mill Creek before it was modified in 2008. And you can see as it progresses towards present day on the right side, the change that has been produced through intervention. This particular project included the modification of approximately 1,500 meters of channel, and it also had planning that included the retention of an existing stand of trees, which is a similar approach to how Fulton Creek proposed will be done. Next slide, please. Here are a couple more examples. The top row of photos demonstrates the capacity of natural channel design to restore extremely degraded systems. The right-hand side shows the post-construction, about 2 to 3 years post-construction, and you can see that it was previously a concrete channel. And on the lower row of images, this is a dam removal project where the channel was, the dam pond was removed and the channel was redesigned and realigned. And the photos are about 2 years apart. Both these projects incorporated riparian wetlands to increase the habitat diversity in the valley. And next slide. Just another sample project where on the left, the original condition was a tile drain, so heavily impacted agricultural lands, and most of the flow was underground before the stream restoration project came through. And the photo on the right shows a view of the new channel and new channel valley about 2 years post-construction, and the land on either side has since been developed. The goal of natural channel design is leaving a channel that looks like it belongs, that provides the function of a natural creek, and about 3 to 5 years post-construction, the average person should never have an idea that the channel hasn't always belonged. And lastly, thank you for your attention. I'll take questions if there are any.
Okay. Thank you so much. So that concludes the speakers and new speakers registered in favor. And now we'll go to questions from council to speakers in favor. Who would like to start? Councillor Wright, you want to start? Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And I don't know if it would be Elisa maybe or Heather. With some of the sections of Fulton Creek that have already been like underground or actually even the marshland itself, which is now part of the Maple neighborhood, can you sort of give me some information on how that has degraded the creek and the fish that used to swim in there?
Through the chair, I'm going to direct it to Nick Price.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. If you look at, I believe, the EIA, particularly the diversion of the culvert downstream from Polypow, that's resulted in obviously no fish being able, because there is no fish in the upward stream area. That was
now.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now. So from an ecological point of view, that's obviously had an impact. I can certainly, Megan is here, so she can probably go into a lot more detail, if you like, in relation to that. But in terms of that, that's 4.5 kilometres of the natural system being diverted through to Mill Creek. And that resulted, my understanding, in Polypow, which has been a city project to help with the flooding issue. So that's an artificial man-made structure as well. And I think, it's important to look at that context overall, because if you go further upstream, you've also got the quarry pit that's been restored that was used for the white mud in terms of the road. So it is a Fulton Creek itself. I struggle with the natural
a term because it has been modified so much over the years, including when the hurricane went through, it got fairly damaged as well. Tornado. My apologies, as my tornado went through. So, that's some of the elements, and it is important to look at the context overall of what we're surrounding, both, and I think I mentioned this previously, the history related to these lands, how they weren't really planned before. They've created a lot of these challenges. And what we're trying to do is, in a way, rectify things to make it more usable in the type of industry that's currently been existing there, to bring more modern type of industry, as what's mentioned, the logistics side of things.
To the clerk, my time's not running.
My apologies.
No, it was to the clerk. I'm just wondering, okay, so you mentioned the tornado in '87. So that's been how many years now? 40. So what was the damage caused, and now in that length of time, how has it recovered?
Yeah. So maybe I'll direct this to Megan, but my understanding is obviously trees were damaged during that period. So that's one of the challenges.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is, like, we're talking about, it's going to take 20 or so years to recover. So I just sort of want to get a sense of that timeline, what happens.
Sure. Okay. If I may, I'm going to direct it to Megan, because when you're talking about timeframes, she would be the better expert on this subject matter.
Okay, thank you.
So the 20-year time period that we had referenced, so that's kind of the typical time frame for an aspen to achieve full maturity. So there will be various different timeframes for recovery. So the actual creek itself, a lot of grasses will mature in about a year, 1 to 3 years. You'll have a full riparian ecosystem. Some of the willows will mature a lot faster. And there'll be different ranges of trees that are planted. So 20 years was a conservative estimate, kind of based on one single aspen tree, how long it takes to reach full maturity. With the restoration plan that's proposed, there will be juvenile trees planted, there will be more mature trees, so there will be a bit of stand diversity and age as that recovers.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one question to Mr. Edwards. How come this wasn't all brought together as one proposal, the phase 1 and phase 2?
It kind of was. So when the initial subdivision was done for the 2 existing buildings, this was contemplated. And I do have to say, I know it was a difficult decision in front of you. We've spent 3 years working with administration, grappling with the complexity of this decision. I think we've got to a place, and again, credit to the administrative staff for keeping coming back to us and saying, no, I don't think that's going to work. If you want to do this, you need to do it right, and here's what we think right looks like. So a lot of time has been put into that, and the reason that you're here today instead of 3 years ago is 3 years ago we didn't have anywhere near the information, anywhere near the depth of research that we have today, and the infrastructure that has been constructed needed to be constructed in order to activate to make the current land in a position to build on.
Okay, and there was some talk about unlocking the land to the east. Are there going to be other roads? Because that 51st Avenue right now that comes to the dead end, I don't see any other road that's going over to the east from there.
So 51st connects up with Roper. Sorry, 56 connects up with Roper. 51st comes to a dead end, and there is a business park there that's owned by a developer currently. We take 56th Avenue connected up to Roper. We've built Roper through to the east boundary of our property. And we've also designed, part of our responsibility was to design the long-term Roper plan to connect it to 17th, which is obviously a constrained area and one of notable growth for the city.
Okay, I'll have to come back to get clarity.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Go ahead, please.
Great, thank you very much. I think, Elisa, in your presentation, you said the majority of those 9,000-something trees were invasive. I think I missed that detail in the report. Do you have a sense of, like, what percentage, or?
I might have misspoke. Not all of them are invasive. I think I said some of them were invasive.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
I can direct that, though, to
Sure.
Megan. She would have a better idea.
Sorry, Councillor, I don't have the exact percentage right now, but there is a large proportion of Manitoba maple there that is a very competitive species that dominates the landscape. So its range, they are here. Its range is typically in southern Alberta, but it's a mix. So that's the species. I can see if I can get a percentage of that if that helps.
Great, thank you. And then question to Heather online. Thank you for your presentation. So currently the creek is in a culvert, so you will have to also do a significant work to daylight that first before you relocate it, correct?
The portion of channel that we are proposing to relocate is largely above ground on surface. So there's only a couple of small culvert crossings that would have to be removed as part of the works.
Okay, and then you also talked about the Mill Creek restoration over around 17, or you compared this project to the 17th Street one. I was wondering if you can elaborate. And then those photos you shared, the before, during, and after, what's the timeline between those photos?
The Mill Creek channel was a project in a different situation. It was not necessarily realigned for the purposes of development, and Megan can add more clarity on that. But the timelines on these particular photos for the Mill Creek site are about 15 years apart, I think from 2008 to 2025. So that's what you're seeing there. But the other images that I shared on the before and after are much closer to one another, just a few years.
Yeah, okay. Megan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so Mill Creek, I think there's part of it's a city project as well for, the channel was reconstructed, realigned, deepened to address flooding with the residential development in the Tamarack and Meadows neighborhoods. And so the part we're looking at is the part on the west side of 17th Street, so the east side of 17th Street, I think was just constructed a couple of years ago, was more recent. And then, yeah, I think Heather got that. So the original before photos were about 2008. The construction, I think, was around 2010 to 2011. And then those before photos were ones that were just taken recently this past month.
So at least we're a 15-year journey to kind of get to that point. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't have anything further. I thought it was interesting you included the Schneider Creek project in Kitchener, because I learned about that when I was at the Sustainable Communities Conference back in February. But I don't know if that's a comparable, but that's just your example of kind of realignment. That was.
I provided it just to show that this type of work is possible and has been done before with success.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cartwell.
Great, thank you. Pardon me. To Mr. Edwards, I just following up on some earlier questions. If this application is approved, then there's a government Alberta process that needs to be employed. Presuming that is also approved, then work proceeds to develop this space, relocate the creek and develop this space. And that all of that work is undertaken by your firm, correct?
Correct.
If it's not approved today, then I guess what is the expectation? Is the expectation if the existing creek bed and path are maintained, maybe not your expectation, but is your goal then that the city acquires that land because it is of no further use to your firm?
Yeah, we haven't delved too deep into that. Like the existing creek and its reserve area, we have to protect it as part of if we did a subdivision down the road. So what that leaves us with is awkwardly shaped pockets of land that don't function super well for what we do. So we would have to go back and reconsider how we wanted to do that.
Is there a portion of that land that could be used? Like you'd have to do some work to redesign your lot layout and that kind of a thing, I guess. But do you still perceive that there's some land there that would be useful, or is effectively everything north of Roper Road extended?
Yeah, you'd end up, between the existing creek and Roper now, there's two very awkward shaped 1 acre parcels that don't fit warehouses on them very well. Everything north of the existing creek is lay down rental space at best.
And somewhat inaccessible.
Yes, the access isn't great there, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cardwell. Councillor Jans.
I just wanted to understand a little better here. This has obviously been 3 years. This has been a big journey. There's obviously something here that's so appealing that you've stuck with this given all the complications. And I'm not as familiar with the area, but like, is it a location efficiency argument? Is it proximity? Is it rail connections? Can you help me understand like the commitment to this this project here?
Yeah, so good question, thank you. The Southeast Edmonton industrial market represents 60% of Edmonton's total industrial market. So companies want to be here. If you looked at the map that was up earlier, you could clearly see that when we call industrial, I want to be clear because I think a lot of people, it conjures up the images of refineries and meat packing plants, and what we call industrial is logistics, and logistics is quite a sophisticated business. So when you look at the rooftops in that area, you can certainly see that logistics wants to be there. From this site, once you take a left-hand turn and you're on the White Mud Drive, there's not another single traffic light from there to Calgary. That's a big advantage for logistics users. So we've liked that site for 15, 20 years. We've always liked this site. When it finally came available, we were quick to act on it for those reasons. So our commitment there is that people want to be there. And so there was a couple of comments earlier about the industrial land that's available in Edmonton. Yes, there's lots of industrial available in Edmonton, but respectfully, council doesn't get to tell the market where they want to be. You can open land up. You can say, Edmonton, the EETP as an example, you can zone it, you can write all the reports you want, but if the market doesn't want to go there, it's not shovel ready. The market wants to be where we are. And it's been proven. I mean, we put up 2 buildings. One of them was 50% leased before we finished it. The other building is fully leased as of last week. So the tenants, the market is showing us that we made a good decision.
And just to do the kind of the counterfactual on that, then, if this was denied, where would that logistics company relocate to? Where would be? Yeah. Are we talking outside the Henday,
Yes.
the region, or somewhere else?
Yeah, you'd likely southeast would. I mean, you've already seen it when you come in from the airport. It started to migrate south. There isn't a lot of land actually available inside the Henday that's easy to activate. That's cost effective to activate. 17th is a corridor that it should be active, but it's very expensive to activate. So you're starting to see those rooftops move to Nisku. And there's several million square feet down there over the past 10 years. There's several million square feet down in that area that's being squeezed out.
Can I go to the ecologist online? I have a question. So when I see the 6,900 loss of existing trees, there's not just that, there's the ecosystem, et cetera, but I lack context for that 6,900 number. Is that the equivalent of like 20 single-family detached homes? Is that like, no if whether a development is in location A or location B, there's some nature somewhere, some habitat somewhere. I'm just trying to understand. I'm sorry, I don't know the guest's name from your.
It's Heather.
Heather, are you with us still?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so can you help put into context for me 6,900 trees? Like, is that based on the size, the location, et cetera? Like, how many trees would be in the Horse Hill ASP, or how many trees were in Belgravia or Riverdale, or I'm missing sort of the context of those numbers.
May I throw that one back to Megan?
Oh, sorry, please.
I guess there's roughly about 6 hectares of trees. I don't actually know how many houses you would fit in 6 hectares, unless Nick knows. The trees, it's an estimate. It's based on plots and extrapolation. So we didn't go count every single tree. There was a number of plots, so it is an estimate. And then of that, there are about a hectare of trees that are being retained. So we'll say, if that helps, about 6 hectares of trees. Does that provide some context?
If I may, just quickly, the soundbite of 6,900 trees being removed. Remember that these trees are being replaced. This isn't a net loss. So there's actually a net gain in trees. So I just want to be clear on that, because I think last week there was a discussion around, we're deleting 6,900 trees, and that's certainly not the case.
Like I can't even think, like, how many textbooks is that? Like, how is it, like sometimes we get these reports and there's no context, and it's just, like, have I gone through 6,900 trees this year as a counselor? I don't know.
Thank you,
I'm out
Councillor
of time,
Jans.
sorry.
Councillor Jans, thank you so much. And can you take the chair?
It's taken.
Thank you. So how many trees are being replanted, or will be replanted?
So there are about 6,000 trees being planted in the creek area.
Yeah.
Plus an additional about 1,500 planted within the site. So there's
I
a
see,
net
okay.
gain of almost 500 trees.
And that's on the site under consideration, but you already developed another parcel, you might have added more trees there too?
Yeah, there might, and this is a preliminary estimate, because through the process, we've also added in more parts of ER, so these were based on the the original landscape plan, so there will be changes to this as the detailed design happens, and we, intend obviously to add as much.
So there's a net gain. City's also committed to planting additional maybe that could be questioned to administration later, 2 million trees, that's my understanding. There's some work being done on 34th Street and the vicinity. Are you contributing to that work?
That is us.
That's your work?
Yes.
Oh, I see. So there's a benefit to public infrastructure in the area that people in the southeast will benefit from.
Yeah, so we've built 34th Street up to the north of the property.
Yeah.
We've finished Roper Road and connected it across 34th Street to build the future connection to 17th, and we've also brought 56th Street and put it into a section which will connect it across to Roper, heading east in the future. So it's a fairly significant infrastructure built there.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm very familiar with this site. I actually go for a walk there because it's a beautiful area to walk around. So the restoration, I also live close to Mill Creek, so I have actually seen those photos you have shown and the time frames you have highlighted. Maybe it's to Heather. I have actually seen that come along. The maturity have taken place over years. So that's the kind of will happen here too with the realignment. Is my understanding?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Cool. All right. Those are the questions I had. Councillor Jans, can you move this? I'll move the second round.
So moved.
Second.
Call the vote.
Will mark Councillor Stevenson absent. And we have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That is carried unanimously. Return the chair.
Okay, I'll get the chair back. Councillor Wright, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just one last round of questions here for just to provide some context for my colleagues of the area. Could I ask you to bring up slide, I think it's 9 of the admin's presentation? Because I think I had referenced 51st Avenue earlier, and it should actually be 56th Avenue. Because I'm just trying to find out how this this realignment of the creek improves like access east of your lands there, Mr. Edwards. So right now we've got around the 2 buildings that you've just recently constructed, we've got Roper Road and 56th Avenue coming off, which then comes to the dead end. And that's the end of your land, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So from there, the landowners to the east could then continue that road, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So how does changing the creek improve access for them? Is there going to be another road that's going to be going east-west?
Nope. I don't think we've made any claims that moving the creek improves the access from Roper Road. The area structure plan lays out Roper Road's future. It's that layout is already determined. I think what we've done is we've constructed it at our cost.
Right, okay, and there was some change to a bylaw as well, I think, that we made, or policy that we made to increase the developers from 50% to 100% of the tax revenue that, in order for those extras to be done, right?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're referring to as the cost-sharing program. So what you've done is reduced the amount of time that we would have to wait to get our contribution back from the neighbors from about 20 years to maybe 15 or 10 years.
Okay, I knew there was something that we had done a few years ago. I think it was a motion that Councillor Cartmel introduced. But there's been talk here today and previously about how this realignment will help open up the land to the east. And I don't see it's the same road whether the creek stays where it is or if the creek moves.
Councillor, maybe I could address that question if that's appropriate for you.
Please.
So there are two factors. One is, the Roper Road, the alignment is a city alignment. So what it does, it's a major arterial road. It has servicing within it. And so what you end up doing, if it doesn't move forward, you don't capitalize on the use of that resource. So think of that as your resource, and you're trying to capitalize on making sure you get the best use out of the resource. If we can't move and so we had no choice because the Roper Road is where it went, and so between that and Fulton Creek, there's not the land to be able to develop on that side. So you end up with only development on one side, capitalizing on what is a significant resource, because when you look at your expenditure, majority of council's money goes into roads and its underground infrastructure. That's where the majority of funding goes. So what we're trying to do is capitalize on both sides, which has a benefit from a tax purpose. So this is part of the reason for why to enable that, we have to alter a portion of the creek. Getting Roper Road through, though it ends at that point, the continuation is in accordance with pretty much the master plan or the area structure plan. So for Roper Road to continue through when development is seen as advantageous further on to the east. And that creates, by us building it now to this point, is now ready for the next person when they're going to develop it, because the city will require the extension of Roper Road through the 15th. So, and that's how planning sort of works. So we've now built a significant portion of it, and then there'll be another significant in alignment with the city's plan to build its transportation system. Does that help answer the question?
Not really, because it's the same road that's going to access it. So whoever that other property owner is can just continue on that from that road. Because I don't think we can actually be, under public hearing land use, I don't think we should be able to, or should be considering any of the taxes that would be gained from, I guess, the other side of Roper Road, the north side of Roper Road being developed. Is that right, Mr. Johnson? Or
Councillor, you're correct, but the utilization of infrastructure is valid enough for you.
Okay. Just wanted to. Okay, and my time is up, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, so that concludes the questions to all of you. Thank you so much. Please step back into the public area, and next we will go to folks, new registered speakers in opposition. I will call your names. Patsy Cottrell, are you there remotely?
Here.
Thank you.
Here, online.
Thank you. Linda Duncan, joining remotely.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Reading.
Ryan Jake. Ryan Jake remotely. No. Raquel Firo. No.
Here.
Oh, Raquel, you there? Thank you. Christine Kwalchuk.
Hello, I'm here.
Thank you. Eric Gormley.
Oh, I'm here.
Thank you. And Sherry Heschuk. Okay, we will start with Patsy Cottrell. Each will have 5 minutes to make your presentations. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. I'm Patsy Cottrell, a retired botanist and a member of various botanical and conservation societies. I've been involved in the management of aspen parkland remnants in Fort Saskatchewan and Nisku. Conservation is always better than restoration, a maxim that ecologists use. And I'm opposing this proposal for this reason. It relies heavily on the idea that the environmental destruction entailed can be mitigated by restoring the natural ecosystem along the realigned creek. It can't. This is not protection. The natural ecosystems of the central parkland subregion where we are have developed over thousands of years since the end of the last ice age. It is naive and wishful thinking to assume that we humans can recreate in a few years with a single planting or even a series of plantings, a diverse natural ecosystem of equivalent value to what we will lose. Planting trees produces a tree plantation, not a forest. If land is cleared, it becomes a breeding ground for weeds, which are non-native, often invasive species that have honed their ability to colonize bare ground in the plowed up agricultural fields of Europe over millennia. The new ecosystem will definitely not be better, and I hope this answers some of the councillors' questions this morning. I know of no successful restorations in the Central Parkland region, and none that I'm aware of in the city of Edmonton. Rather, I can point to some local failed attempts. For example, the Natural Area Management Plan done in 2009 for Pilipow and Fulton Creek natural areas, which are contiguous to the northwest of the project area, intended the newly constructed stormwater management ponds immediately south of Fulton Creek to be restored with native non-woody plants in the wet meadow and with native trees and shrubs in the uplands. But what is actually there are large expanses of non-native legumes, such as sisal milkvetch and alfalfa, which colonize bare ground readily. The only native ecosystem in the vicinity is the undisturbed riparian forest along Fulton Creek. The situation is similar at Milton Creek Roper Pond, farther to the northwest, which you've heard about this morning as well, where the contrast between the reconstructed area, and that was done around 2004, and the original forest remnant along the creek is striking. I consider the worst example of all to be Chauncey Wetland in the northeast of the city. This site was completely plowed up and recontoured around 2005. Inadequately planted and maintained, it is a sea of weeds with deteriorating infrastructure. Which raises the question, will the proponent have the resources to do the intensive planting, monitoring, and adaptive management needed for even a half-decent reclamation job? These resources will still be necessary when the city takes over after 10 years. And I doubt very much that this chronically cash-strapped city will be able to ante up these resources. And where are these native natural plant materials to come from, given that we have few native plant suppliers in the parkland? Regarding Stantec's environmental impact assessment, I have some problems with the choices of species to be planted, which seem to be arbitrary rather than reflective of a local ecosystem. I don't have time to go into details, but I do refer to some specific examples in the letter I sent to council on Monday. These questions suggest to me that maybe the local expertise for restoration doesn't exist. I'd like to add that I'm disappointed with the plan to put in multi-use trails on both sides of the creek. Human presence, especially if it involves dogs, will militate against a natural environment. Trails take up ground space, allow the transit of weeds, and reduce wildlife activity. I'm shortly out of time. I would just like to say I like the idea of preserving the current creek alignment as ER and even expanding rehabilitation in the vicinity, as I think Councillor Knack was suggesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Next, we'll go to Linda Duncan. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you see me and hear me?
We can hear you. Now we can partially see you. Here you go. Now we can see you. Here you go.
Welcome back, Mayor. I think I'm here representing the North Saskatchewan River Valley Conservation Society. I'm a director and the vice president of that organization. I think it's very important to clarify at the outset that the city, neither the property owner of the city, have the authority to destroy a creek and watershed. And as has been casually mentioned, this work can't be done until a permit is received from Alberta Environment from under the Water Act. Of course, when the province reviews this, they're not bound by the many policies and bylaws of the city, including the North Saskatchewan River Valley Conservation Bylaw. What we are looking at, and we've heard a lot of information about, essentially administration must be asking the city to endorse this application by this private property owner of this industrial estate to the province. So it hasn't really been clear exactly what is being requested of council. We can change all the bylaws and land designations and so forth, but it's not going to allow the destruction of the creek unless the city supports that application to the province. I think it's also important to point out that the impact assessment, which thank you, has finally been made available to the public, was commissioned by the corporation in order to enable the destruction of the creek and to build a new ditch and do some planting. What we have not been able to see is the evaluation by the environmental staff of the city of Edmonton, and that is disappointing. What is also disappointing is, despite the fact that our organization has been an active stakeholder at the invitation of the city in the redevelopment of our River Valley bylaw and the Ribbon of Green, we were never notified of this, despite many active meetings with the city even a few weeks ago. So that raises concerns about what is going to happen into the future with the work of the city in protecting the River Valley. One thing that has been very disappointing in all of this discussion, we have not heard the administration reference all of the many policies and bylaws that this council and series of councils have passed that bind the decisions of the administration in the protection of these ravines and the river. And the most recent one, which this council was part of, is a City Policy Bylaw 2000, which very clearly states that Edmonton maintains and invests in regionally significant ecological connectivity and natural assets. Surely that's the starting point for whether or not this should occur. So we have a private property owner who wants to have our River Valley bylaw changed so that that part of our River Valley ravines are not protected. That is very concerning, especially since the new supposedly strengthened bylaw and Ribbon of Green policy aren't coming to council until this June. So here we have ongoing actions which are destroying part of the natural area of the city. But even the impact assessment that was commissioned by the private property owners say it's an area of high environmental sensitivity, a 20 to 40-year-old forest, and the listing of birds in the area is stunning. I do note the Sora, who I've never been fortunate enough to see, is a remarkable bird, rarely seen. There is a list of, I think, about 20 or 30 migratory birds, breeding birds in this area. Very healthy watershed. And then there are white-tailed deer, moose, snowshoe hare. Our recommendation to the city would be is to not approve this and instead go with environmental reserve. We're disappointed that administration have not suggested environmental reserve quite some time ago. It's so important that we protect the last of these natural areas. This is, from what we've seen at this creek, it doesn't need a lot of investment or restoration. It's an incredibly healthy area, and it is very, very valuable to the city. And I look forward to questions from council. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Next, we will go to Califero.
Ryan Jakes is here.
Oh, so hold on. Oh, Ryan, you there? So, okay, sorry. Ryan Jake, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, City Councilors, and thank you for your time and consideration. I should note I am in a semi-public space, so hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah,
My
go ahead.
name is Ryan Jakes. Oh, sounds good. And frankly, I am quite concerned by this highly unusual request to relocate a creek. Past mistakes of rerouting creeks in the area should be no excuse to continue the degradation of the Fulton Creek ecosystem and Edmonton's treasured river valley system in general. Even though this land is fairly central and quite serviceable, let's not set a precedent that Edmonton's river valley system is fair game for new development. As the applicant stated at last week's public hearing, they did not purchase the land with the intent of developing the creek area. They should honor and stick to this original intent instead of playing games with Edmonton's future sustainability, despite the apparent change in Roper Road's orientation from its conception. I would be curious to know why and how it was decided that Roper Road would run alongside the edge of the creek, and if the Fulton Creek Business Park had a chance to collaborate on this. As well, the applicant noted that they attempted to engage with nearby businesses that would be right next to the creek if relocated. Perhaps the onus is on the nearby businesses to ask questions, but are we not concerned about the long-term effects of an artificially built creek in general? Nature is, after all, very powerful, and the creek chose its current route for a reason. Relocating it would require long-term monitoring, presumably by the city, to ensure the monitoring is done in good faith and in the public interest. And this would be on a number of key factors, such as wildlife, plants, water throughput, and soil erosion. Regarding soil erosion, warning bells are already going off in Mill Creek. Quote, a heavily modified system, as stated by an earlier speaker in favor. And these warning bells should make us pause and reflect on the impacts of development on ecosystems, including Fulton Creek. It is widely known and visibly apparent that soil erosion is a significant and worsening problem across Mill Creek. Yet, the city is currently committed to going full steam ahead on building a 76th Avenue road bridge over Mill Creek, which should cost presumably north of $25 million based on the similarly scoped ladder bridge and current economic conditions, and of course, significantly impact the Mill Creek ecosystem. Daylighting the creek does sound nice, but the city planners did say in an email that the bridge requires, and I quote, stream realignment, presumably in part to run the creek more north-south, so a shorter east-west bridge can be built. And this stream realignment, similar to Fulton Creek, will have a significant impact on soil erosion, not to mention the impact of heavy construction. Did you know that about 50 years ago, 4 homes had to be demolished in the southwest corner of King Edward Park neighborhood because of soil erosion in Mill Creek? Now soil erosion is back with a vengeance, and I wonder which homes or businesses will be next if the city allows soil erosion caused by creek developments to get out of hand across the city. This Fulton Creek relocation is a concerning request in general that brings further questions to the surface. How would Fulton Creek Business Park be held accountable for any issues that arise during or after creek relocation? Is there any risk for future issues to be downloaded onto Edmonton taxpayers, similar to orphan oil well owners shirking their cleanup responsibilities? How does the city take these short-term and long-term environmental risks into consideration when evaluating developments that affect creeks? I also question how the number of 300 to 400 jobs was reached. I sincerely hope that isn't counting the people who would be working for the sake of working to rebuild a perfectly functional creek. As well, regarding an earlier statement that we can, quote, understand what was being lost, how arrogant are we as humans? How can we make a relocated creek even better and even more natural than actual nature. Let us not put a public good at risk in order to develop for private interests. The Fulton Creek Business Park should respect its namesake and protect the part of the creek in their backyard that we can never truly get back if relocation is approved by the city and the province. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. The rest of the speakers have already spoken at the last April 28th meeting, and now we'll go to questions to the speakers. All right, questions, colleagues. Okay, Councillor Knack, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Sohi. I feel like I get like this is challenging because I you know, on one hand I hear our speakers in favor and say it's very, I'm not going to use the term easy, but generally speaking, this can be moved and we can create something that's more beautiful and functional and better for the, and potentially better for the ecology over time. I'm hearing now, I'm going to pick on maybe Ms. Cotterill to start, you know, but I'm hearing from you saying all of these things that have been done in the city haven't worked, and so it feels like I'm facing two extremes right now. It's either we're you know, it can definitely work or nothing can work, and I guess I wouldn't mind just getting a sense of, it doesn't feel like it's an either or, but I wanted to get a better sense of, you said these other examples haven't worked in the city. Can you give me a little more detail on what you mean by that?
Yes, from my experience, when land has been cleared down to bare ground, the city has not been able, or the consultants doing the work, the landscapers, have not been able to recreate anything which doesn't have a maximum a percentage component of native species, because native species generally exist in mature environments, which, as I mentioned, have you know, matured over hundreds, if not thousands of years. So you get these pioneering species, and the major pioneering species are invariably weeds. So it takes a huge amount of effort, of resources, time, and management in order to foster a native ecosystem, which can't be achieved, you know, for probably hundreds of years. There's a particular problem in the parkland because we have this invasive grass called smooth brome, which was introduced across the West in the early part of the 20th century. It's extremely aggressive, and it takes over, it even penetrates you know, natural aspen stands. So that makes, this is it's not listed as a noxious or a noxious weed because it is an agricultural species, but it is a huge agricultural weed. So, you know, you have to battle that with herbicide. And I'm thinking that neither the proponent nor the city will be able to muster the resources that is needed to remove weeds and keep on planting, given there will be mortality, to produce even intensive area, which will be essentially a reclamation and not a restoration, because it will not approximate the original ecosystem.
Can I jump?
And just on the notion of Manitoba maples, yes, the creek is disturbed already. It's in the middle of an urban area, but Manitoba maple has become naturalized, and it does perform ecosystem functions. So, some species are better than others.
Thank you. I'm going to jump back in. So I guess what I'm trying to get a sense of is you know, so I think you described, but I'm trying to, can you point me to an example in the city where this was tried? You mentioned 2009 that we've tried some things where we haven't seen the success that I think is being proposed. So I don't know if that's to you, Ms. Cotterill, or Dr. Farrow, Ms. Duncan, anyone who can give me some historical knowledge of something we've tried where you haven't seen the success.
Well, the Pilipow area that I mentioned, which is just you can actually see it on the slide 9, I think, that administration produced.
Yes, yeah.
According to the Natural Area Management Plan, that was supposed to be restored with native species. And when you enter the property from, I think it's 34th Street, what you see surrounding the constructed wetlands is vast areas. There is natural vegetation in the fringe around the ponds because weeds can't actually penetrate very well saturated soil. But the rest of it is non-native, particularly these non-native legumes that I referred to. And there doesn't seem to be any significant planting of trees. So you look at essentially a reclaimed area, as I think Heather showed in some of her pictures, but it is not equivalent to the dense forest of the the remnant forest surrounding the creek.
Thank you. I'm going to be out of time, but appreciate that. Thank you.
And the other one, of course, is Shaughnessy, which is a complete disaster.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, we are going to take a break here, and we will be back at 1:30 and carry on with the conversation. Okay. Until then, we are on the recess.